Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel, or if you're here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. Anyway, today I'm coming to you with a long overdue video. Today I'm doing my first book haul in 3 years. I have not done a book haul in almost 3 years. Okay, it's not quite 3 years. I think it was June or July 2020. So pretty much 3 years. I haven't done a book haul in 3 years, essentially, because I really try not to buy books anymore. This started when I started university back in 2017. I really stopped buying books because I just didn't have the money, you know? I had other things that I had to pay for. Whereas prior to that, all I really had to pay for were like my hobbies, which was obviously booktube and reading and everything like that. So yeah, most of my money was used on books. And now I can't do that because I'm a grown-up. Ugh. But yeah, so I really don't buy books very much anymore, and especially since starting work at the library, I really try and get all of my books from there where I can, although I now have a much bigger TBR, which you'll find out about in a little bit. Much bigger TBR than I finished the year with. So yeah, I really need to start reading some of the books that I have acquired recently. Mostly I read my books from the library because I have that resource. I'm there 4 to 5 days a week. I prefer to borrow my books from the library now, and then if I love a book, I will buy it. So all that to say, I just didn't see the point in doing a book haul until I had acquired quite a few. Like, I prefer to do collective ones, and I meant to kind of do one like once a year. And then here we are, and it's 3 years later, and I have a lot of books to talk about. So yeah, I actually have, I think, 34 books that I have acquired in the last 3 years, which really is not that bad if you do it like in general. It's about 11 books a year, except for the fact that it's not actually that because most of these books I acquired in the last 2 months. So yeah, we'll get to that later on in the video. But yeah, I have a few different like categories of where books have come from and when, but like it really doesn't matter that much. I have a lot of books to haul, and let's just get into it. So the first books I'm going to talk about are all from the end of 2020. So these are actually books that I got from friends because I really did not buy very many books in 2020, but a few of my very good friends from BookTube bought me some books. So the first book was from Nicole from Who Picked This Book, and she actually got this for me because we had just started doing the Ember Along, which we did a read along of the Ember and the Ashes series, which was so much fun. I really loved doing that. That was at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. But yeah, as sort of like a it's nice to meet you, I'm excited to, you know, do this with you sort of gift, Nicole got me The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater because this was on my Amazon wish list, because I had always been meaning to reread this because the first time I read it, I was not really a character-driven reader, and this is very much a character-driven story. So I put it onto my wish list with the thought of like, I will reread that at some point. I actually did reread it last year, and I really enjoyed it. I think I read it in like January though, and I just still haven't continued on with the series, which is a bit of an issue, but I do plan to read the rest of the series at some point. And this is basically like about this girl called Blue, and she meets these boys who, they go to some sort of private school, and basically the boys who go to that school are called the Raven Boys. Anyway, Blue meets these boys, and they are on a hunt to find these ley lines, to find this ancient Welsh king. And Blue is from a family of psychics, and so she can basically like amplify people's powers, but she doesn't have powers of her own. That's what the first book's about. More of a character-driven story than a plot-driven story, but still a really good time. Thank you again, Nicole, for this one from 3 years ago, but thank you. Anyway, and then the rest of the books from this little segment are books that I got for my birthday or Christmas. Birthday and or Christmas. So the first one I have is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This was given to me by Elena from Elena the Great, who hasn't been posting videos for quite a while, but I think she's about to start posting again. She recently started posting on Bookstagram again, and she mentioned that she was planning to come back at some point. So I'll link her channel down below, of course. So yeah, I'll obviously link everyone's channels below who I mentioned. She gave this to me for my birthday and Christmas of 2020 because my birthday is 2 days before Christmas. Fun fact, if you didn't know. This book, I'm sure you know what it's about. It's like a vampire type story. Very confusing, very long, but it's kind of fun. I haven't continued on with the series, but I did actually enjoy this one when I read it, but I just don't think I can manage rereading it because it is all over the place. But that doesn't mean I didn't have a fun time. Like, I did enjoy it, and I actually kind of like the cover, so like I'm never gonna get rid of it, also because Elena gave it to me and I love Elena. And I remember at the time, I think she and Mel were reading it, and so we had like a group chat about it, and yeah, it was a good old time. We did have a bit of a discussion about it, and it was so fun, and I used to do that all the time, and like I barely ever buddy read anymore. It's so sad. So I'm trying to get back into that this year. So if there are any books that I mention later on that I haven't read yet and you want to buddy read them, let me know. I'm here for it. The next 3 books are all from Mel, from the Bookish Mel. Mel is my booktube bestie. If you didn't know, we just hit it off instantly, and I feel like we're very similar people, and that when we meet in person, we're just gonna get along so well. And I say when, not if, because it's gonna happen at some point. I need to get myself over to California, or she needs to get herself over to London ASAP, because that needs to happen. Anyway, she very kindly got me 3 books for my birthday and Christmas that year. So she got me Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert, because I think I had just read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and she got this one for me, and I really enjoyed this one. This is the second book in it's called the Brown Sisters trilogy. Basically follows 3 sisters. The first one's Chloe Brown, the second one is Danny Brown. Anyway, and it's just sort of like their little romance stories. But yeah, this one follows Danny Brown, who is a university professor, and I think she ends up fake dating the security guard who works in her building, and then it turns into a real romance, obviously. Like, I have read this, obviously, but it's been a while, so can't really remember it that well. She also got me Poems for the End of the World by Katie Wismer, which was Katie's second poetry collection, because she knows how much I love Katie's poetry. So yeah, she got this for me, and I had actually already read it because I read an arc of it, and I haven't actually gone back and read from this copy yet, but I definitely plan to at some point. Like, the next time I'm in the mood for— ow, I just scratched my face with the book. The next time I'm in the mood for poetry, I will be rereading it. Also, I'm just obsessed with it because, like, I love the cover. But wait, there's more. She also got me The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I feel like we were also going to buddy read with Elena. Like, we had a lot of, like, the 3 of us did a lot of buddy reads. Like, I feel like in the summer of 2020, we were just— the 3 of us were doing so many buddy reads. I don't know if we actually did do that many or if it just feels like it, but I swear we did a bunch. Anyway, so yeah, she also got me The Vanishing Half, which follows these twin sisters who are born in the 1960s in this town in the southern states somewhere, and basically they kind of grow up and they end up going their separate ways, and one of them ends up passing for white, and she like marries a white man and like really kind of disassociates from her black family. Anyway, and it also takes place in the 1990s when their daughters' paths cross, and it's all about sort of like how they've grown apart and then like coming back together. And basically it says here, The Vanishing Half is at once a riveting emotional family story and a brilliant exploration of race, gender, and identity, and the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's desires and expectations. I feel like that is the perfect way to summarize it. Like, that is what this book is, and I really enjoyed it. I really like family stories. I think I gave it 4 stars when I read it. Yeah, so those are all the books from 2020. We have so much to go through. Oh my god. I've already been talking for far too long, so I'll try and speed this up. Next, we have books that I bought in 2021 because they were all books that sounded interesting to me. So these are all 2021 releases as well. So we have At Your Age, Eve Brown, the last book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, and probably my favorite. I really enjoyed this one. This one is about Eve, who doesn't really know what she's doing with her life and has tried like multiple different career options and ends up becoming the chef in a B&B because she accidentally hits the owner of this B&B with her car, and so as like a favor she starts to work there, even though he really does not want her to work there, obviously, after she freaking hit him with her car, and then they fall in love. Next, I got Andy Weir's latest book, which Andy Weir is the author of The Martian, which is my favorite book of all time, probably, and he released a book in 2021 called Project Hail Mary, and I had to buy it because I love Andy Weir, and I was just convinced that I was never going to be able to get it from the library because the wait was going to be way too long, so I just bought it. I don't regret it at all. I will say this is not as good as The Martian in my opinion, but I still did really enjoy it. It basically follows our main character, whose name I think is Ryland. Yes, his name is Ryland. So essentially something has come to Earth that is going to kill the population, and so Ryland, for some reason, he's on a spaceship and he wakes up and finds out that he's actually the only one still alive on that spaceship because the other scientists who are with him have unfortunately died for whatever reason. Anyway, and they're on this mission to find the answer to the problem, which is killing Earth. He's literally humanity's last resort, and he has to try and find out the answer to saving the world. He's all alone. Or is he? That's all I'm gonna say about that. I enjoyed this one. Again, not as good as The Martian. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe 4.5. I will probably reread it at some point in the future. Next, I have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I had to read it because, you know, everyone was going on about how amazing it was, so I ended up buying it. And I read it when I had COVID and I was in isolation all by myself for a day because my family was like, ooh, we don't want to get it. And I was like, well, we were all in the same car yesterday, so you probably have it already. but they still made me quarantine in my room all by myself. So I read this book and I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of 2021. You probably know what it's about. It's about a girl called Olive who she's basically trying to make her friend think that she's over her ex because she wants her friend to date her ex, but she knows that her friend won't do it unless she's moved on. So she ends up telling her friend that she's on a date, but she's actually at the lab and her friend sees her there. So she grabs the first person she can see and gives him a kiss to, you know, make it out like that's her date. Anyway, it happens to be like the grumpiest professor on campus, and they start a fake dating relationship from there. And I loved this one. Since then, I have not enjoyed a single Ali Hazelwood book that I've read. Like, not like really enjoyed it. They've all been okay. So yeah, I think this one is gonna be like the only one that I ever reread, and I'm not gonna read any more of Ali Hazelwood stuff, but more on that in my January wrap-up, which I already posted. If you missed that, you can check it out in the card. Anyway, then I was also influenced by Noelle from Noelle 7 Pages. She was talking about a book called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. She read this in 2021 and she was talking about how amazing it was, and I was like, well, that sounds amazing. And I feel like this was one of my first forays into nonfiction where it was truly just a topic that interested me to no end. I love anything to do with language, any language to be honest, but obviously I mainly focus on English because that's the language I understand the best. So yeah, I love reading things about the English language and how it works. So when I heard Noelle talking about this book, I thought that sounds freaking interesting. So I had to buy it because again, I think my library didn't have it, and I put in a request for them to buy it and they just didn't. Although the library that I work at actually does have this book on their shelves, and like I really want to find a way to get that onto the display because I want more people to read this. I've just had to change positions because my legs are hurting because I was sitting cross-legged because it's a very comfortable position until it's not. Okay, so now we're moving on to my next section of books, which are books that I bought in 2022. So we're definitely getting closer to present day, so that's good because yeah, all those other books were from a long time ago. So something I talked about earlier was that I wanted my books to reflect my current reading taste, and one of my favorite books of 2021 was one that I read through the library, so I thought, you know what, I have to buy it. But I wanted to wait until the paperback came out because I prefer the paperback cover, so I waited for it, and now I have The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. This was definitely like by far my favorite book of 2021 and one of my favorite books that I've read recently, like my favorite fiction books. I feel like I've really been struggling with the fiction books to find like truly one that I love and that lives in my mind rent-free, although I did actually read one in January, which again, watch my January wrap-up if you haven't already. Not to plug my videos, but yeah, if you haven't watched that, check it out. The Rose Code, if you don't know, follows 3 women in the 1940s during the Second World War who become code breakers at Bletchley Park. And it's basically told in 2 timelines. So the first timeline starts in 1940 when the 3 girls meet and become friends and start to work at Bletchley Park. And then the next timeline is in 1947 when one of them has ended up in an asylum and the other 2 are not on speaking terms anymore. It's all about sort of kind of finding out why they're no longer on speaking terms and what went wrong in their relationship. It's just honestly one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I love this book. I thought it was so thrilling and interesting. I loved the women in this book. Like, it was just the best. If you haven't read this book, you should, especially if you like historical fiction. So I had to own it, and I actually also bought a copy for my granny at the same time because I thought it was a book that she would enjoy, and she did. She loved it. So yeah, that was really great to be able to share this book with her. Next, I have another poetry collection by Katie Wismer. Her latest one was Breakable Things. This came out in April of last year, and I enjoyed this one, but I think it's probably my least favorite of her poetry collections so far. I feel like sometimes you read them at the perfect time and they really hit you in the feels and like are very relatable. Whereas for me, at the time I read this, I didn't find it particularly relatable for me at that time, but that doesn't mean I didn't like it. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's just like poetry about being in your 20s and stuff like that. It was good. I would definitely recommend it. I love her poetry. Next, I bought Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually forgot to put this on my favorite books of last year, like a fool. I don't know why I forgot, but somehow I forgot to mention this. I basically started reading this one at the library, and then I was about to lose my loan. I just didn't have the time to finish it, so I ended up buying it so that I could finish reading it. And I actually really loved this one. This is sort of mainly a family drama, which again, I feel like is my vibe. I do enjoy a good family drama, but it's basically set in the 80s, and every year the Riva children, who are adults now, but they're the children of Mick Riva, who was a famous singer in this world. He's not actually a famous singer, but anyway, he was a famous singer, and his children. Every year they have this party at Nina Riva's house. Nina is the oldest child. She throws a party every year. At this party, somehow at the end of the night, the house ends up in flames. So we have alternating chapters in this one as well, between like what happened in their childhood and then present day. And we have a countdown from 7 a.m. the day of the party till 7 a.m. the morning after. And it's all sort of figuring out like how they got to this point. I really enjoyed this one, and I kind of liked the fact that there was a bit of a mystery. Like, it felt like a bit of a mystery because you're like, why has this ended up going up in flames? It might be my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book so far, but that's just because I love a family story, so probably why. Next, I had to buy my 2 favorite books of last year, so I picked up How Stella Learned to Talk by Christina Hunger, a book about a speech and language therapist who employed those skills that she learned to help people with speech and language therapy. She employed those ideas to help her dog be able to communicate with them, and I loved this book so much. If you missed my video talking about my favorite books of the year, I'll link that up in the card. But yeah, again, I read this one at the library, and so I waited for the paperback to come out, and then I bought this beautiful little pastel yellow book, which I'm so excited to reread at some point. And then I also had to buy Word Slut by Amanda Montell because I started reading this one on Scrib, realized I was gonna love it, and I was like, I gotta own this, so I also bought this. The next book that I bought, I actually kind of regret buying, only because I don't think I'll reread it, but it is related to one of my favorite series, so you know, it's fine. But anyway, I bought Gleanings by Neil Shusterman. This is a collection of short stories set in the same world as the Arc of a Scythe series. You do see some characters pop up from the series in this, but it's mainly following different characters, which is actually kind of interesting, seeing different stories but set in the same world. I kind of regret this because I'm not really a short stories kind of person, so I don't think I'll reread it, and I should have just got it from the library, but I was impatient, so I just bought it. It was fine, and I'm happy to own it because it will look nice with the rest of the series on my shelf. And the last book that I personally bought in 2022 was a second copy of a book that I already own. This is my favorite book, so you know, I had to buy it. So when I went to Canada in June with my family, I went to many bookstores trying to find this book, and unfortunately most of the bookstores around were secondhand, so they didn't have this book anywhere. I didn't get the opportunity to go into a normal bookstore to see if they had it. So when I was going to Mexico, we flew through the States. So I was on a mission to get this book in an airport bookstore, and I had to do it. I just had to. So I bought the US edition of The Martian by Andy Weir, my favorite book, purely because I love this cover. The copy that I already have is the movie cover, so it's just Matt Damon's face, which is like, whatever. But this cover I think is gorgeous, and I've always loved it. I've always been jealous of the fact that I could not get this. And like, I could have, but I would have spent a lot of money getting it shipped here from the US. So I was like on a mission. When we were in that airport, I was like, we were going to a bookstore and I'm buying this copy of this book, and they literally only had 2 copies left. So yeah, I was very lucky that they actually had it, especially because on the way back we flew through Chicago and we had the shortest layover that we literally had to run through the airport because we would have missed our flight. So yeah, I definitely didn't have time to get it then. So yeah, I'm really lucky that I actually managed to get this and then traipsed it around with me all over Mexico for 3 weeks. No regrets. I'm so excited to own this copy of this book, and I do plan to read from this copy at some point, but I just haven't reread it yet. I will though, very soon. So those are all books that I bought for myself, and all of the rest of the books I have to talk about are books that were given to me. It's fine. It's a lot of books, but I didn't spend a penny on any of them. So the first thing I have actually is not a book. It's, you know, a little device that means that I can read thousands of books. I got a Kindle for my birthday from my mom, which is very kind of her. So yeah, this is yet another reason why I probably won't be doing a book haul for quite a while, because I have this little wonderful machine to read all of the books on. But anyway, I haven't actually read any books from it yet. I did use it to buy something actually, but I haven't actually gone on here to read yet. I've organized it into TBR and read, but I haven't actually read anything from it yet. So I will at some point soon. And then for Christmas, one of my brothers-in-law, well, brothers-in-law to be, he got me a book for Christmas, and he got me Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, which is Medusa's story, but I imagine it will be a slightly more updated version. And I am obsessed with this cover. cover. Like literally, this is one of the prettiest books that I own. I'm very excited to read this. I am just waiting a little bit, but I am planning to read this at some point very soon because the cover is beautiful and I'm excited to learn about Medusa's story because I really don't know that much about Medusa. I've heard really good reviews of it. As I said, the cover is beautiful and I'm very grateful to my future brother-in-law for buying me this. Anyway, and then I got another 3 books for Christmas from my mom's boyfriend. He got me the 3 books in the Thursday Murder Club series. I thought it was initially just a trilogy, but actually I think there's a 4th book that's coming out this year. So yeah, but he got me the 3 books in that series. So obviously the Thursday Murder Club, The Man Who Died Twice, and The Bullet That Missed, which is about, I think, senior citizens who solve murders. They meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. Sounds like it's gonna be a fun time. I've heard really great reviews and these are incredibly popular at the library. So it's good that I actually have them so I don't have to wait like, you know, 4 months for it to come through. I'm excited about that. I will get to it at some point when I'm in the mood for some murder. So this last section of books are books that I've actually managed to get from the library, but like not borrowed. Like these are actually my books, because every so often the librarians will go through the books and see which books are not being borrowed enough, and we have to make space for new books, obviously, because we don't have unlimited shelf space. So yeah, the librarians will go through the books and give us lists of things to get rid of, and we try to donate as many as possible, but they will basically only take books that are in really good condition. So a lot of the time we can't donate them, which means we recycle them or we take them home. So on New Year's Eve, actually, we did a big old sweep of the fantasy section. So I took home some books then. And then recently we had to go through our overflow cart because we have this cart which is full of books which they're just duplicate copies and we literally cannot fit them on the shelf. So we went through that and all the books that were not in great condition we got rid of and kept the ones that were in better condition. So yeah, I got a lot of books from that, and these are all books that I haven't read. Yeah, that's part of the reason why my TBR has grown so much in the last few months. And then also all these books are TBR books as well, of course. So all the books that I hold before that, I've read all of them. So I'm actually gonna start off with the 2 books which are not fantasy. We had multiple copies of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, and this one is not the best condition, but I don't really mind, especially with classics. I feel like adds a bit of authenticity to it if it's, you know, a little bit worse for wear. Anyway, I read Pride and Prejudice in 2020 and it was one of my like honorable mentions in my favorites video, and I would like to read some more Jane Austen. So yeah, I thought I would pick up Sense and Sensibility because why not? And then I also picked up an Agatha Christie book because every so often it's fun to read a little crime book. So I got Murder in the Mews by Agatha Christie. I don't know if this is, you know, a Poirot book or anything like that. Oh, it is a Poirot book. I don't know if you're supposed to read Poirot books in order, but I don't plan to. I'm just gonna read this one. Now we're moving on to the fantasy books. So I got The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. This is actually the sequel to The Bear and the Nightingale, which I did not know. I just recognized the author, so I thought, oh, I'll rescue this one from the recycling pile. And then I got home and I realized, oh, this is the sequel. So I do actually have the Kindle version of The Bear and the Nightingale, so I plan to read that at some point and then obviously pick this one up. Anyway, I also got After Alice by Gregory Maguire. So this basically follows Alice's friend who goes to visit her, and she goes a little bit too late and Alice has just tumbled down the rabbit hole, and she goes after her and goes on a quest to find Alice. That sounds interesting. The next one I have is The Masked City by Genevieve Cogman. This is like a Victorian mystery, but also a fantasy, and I thought that sounded fun. Sorry, I'm speeding up now because I don't know what any of these books are about, really. I just thought, why not? Next one is Lady Hotspur by Tessa Gratton. I think that this is a retelling of something from Shakespeare. I'm not very familiar with Shakespeare, but I've heard of Tessa Gratton before, and I thought it looked interesting. Next one literally is in near perfect condition, but the pages are yellow, so they literally won't accept it. So I have Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. Do I know what this book is about? No, I do not. Have I read anything else by Victoria Aveyard? No, I actually never read Red Queen. I think this is like one of her more recent releases and it's been pretty popular. So again, I thought, why not? And then another one I got, I literally just love the cover, and it's called The Beauty of the Wolf by Ray Delaney. I've never heard anything about it before, but cover's gorgeous and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. All of these books, like the writing is relatively big, so like I feel like it will be a quick read when I eventually get to it. Who knows when that's gonna be, but hopefully soon. All right, I'm sorry if the lighting changed or anything, but my camera battery died and it literally takes forever to charge, so it's been like an hour and a half. I only had 7 books to go and my camera was just like, too bad. Moving on to my most recent stack that I brought home from work, we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I've heard very mixed things about this one. Last year I was planning to do a video of reading like the 12 book recommendations by 12 friends for 12 months, so like reading 1 book recommendation from a friend for each month. I started that vlog and I think I read 4 books for it and then I just completely lost steam, but this was gonna be one of them. I just never got to it. So yeah, I'm still interested in reading it. Next I have a book which I literally had no idea what it's about, but I've seen this cover a bunch of times. Anyway, it's called Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield, and it says, in an ancient inn on the Thames, the regulars are entertaining themselves by telling stories when the door bursts open and in steps an injured stranger. In his arms is the drowned corpse of a child. Hours later, the dead girl stirs, takes a breath, and returns to life. Is it a miracle? Is it magic? And who does the little girl belong to? An exquisitely crafted, multi-layered mystery brimming with storytelling and the urgent scientific curiosity of the Darwinian age. Sounds interesting. Next, I got Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. Not sure what this is about. I think it's a bunch of short stories, which will be interesting because I don't really like short stories. I think it is like short stories about Black women throughout history in the UK. Sounds good. I've been meaning to read it for ages and it's been on my TBR for a long time and now I have it. So I will get to it at some point, I promise. Anyway, and then one which I really don't know much about, but it has been very popular, is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. By the way, when I say it's been really popular, I mean really popular at the library more so than really popular online. I haven't been keeping track that much of what's been popular recently, but it might be popular online too, I don't know. This sounds pretty sad by the title and the synopsis which I just read, although apparently it's jaw-droppingly funny. So that's interesting. It's basically about this woman who's about to turn 40 and she feels like her life has just completely gone wrong since she was about 17 and something happened, and she's been, you know, happily married for a long time, but her husband suddenly leaves her and she doesn't really have any friends and she's practically jobless, so she ends up moving in with her parents to try and kind of sort her life out. I don't know, apparently it's funny. I'm interested to see what it's about. Next, I actually have a thriller book, which is Force of Nature by Jane Harper. I have not read anything by Jane Harper, but I know that she has a book called I don't know if it's a book or a series called The Dry, but I'm pretty sure she is an Australian author, and I really don't read very many books by Australian authors, so that will be interesting. I don't really read very many thrillers, so this will be exciting. But basically, I'll just read you the little tagline. 5 women reluctantly pick up their backpacks and start walking along the muddy track. Only 4 come out the other side. Probably a bit of a whodunit, I guess. Next, I have another family drama. I seem to like those a lot. But I have Grown Ups by Marian Keyes, another family story. And I think it's basically about a very dysfunctional family. It follows 3 brothers. One of their wives gets a concussion and then she can't stop herself from saying her thoughts. And one little thing that she says sets off a whole chain of disasters. And then finally, one which I was actually very excited about is a book by Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Big Magic, which is a nonfiction book I read in 2021 and I really enjoyed. It was all about creativity, kind of a self-help book, but I really enjoyed it. She's also the author of Eat, Pray, Love, but I've been meaning to check out her fiction since reading that book, and we were getting rid of a copy of City of Girls, which is the one that I'm like most interested in. It's about a girl who she's exiled to New York City in the 1940s, and she's a seamstress and she starts working on the outfits of like the showgirls, and it's just kind of about her life in the city in the 1940s and all of the stuff that she and her friends get up to. It sounds really good. I've heard really good things, so I'm excited to see how it goes. So it's been a few weeks since I filmed the rest of this video, and since then we have got rid of more books in the library, so naturally I took home more books from the library. I have 11 books to add to this haul, which is terrible because I ended 2022 with 5 books left on my physical TBR, and now in only the 3rd month of 2023 I now have 32 books on my physical TBR, which is a disaster because I'm never going to finish that by the end of the year, although we can hope. Never say never, actually. Anyway, most of these books are actually like crime or thriller books because we were getting rid of a bunch of those. Actually, that's not entirely true. Half of them are crime and thrillers. I've got a nonfiction, some classics, and some historical books, so a nice little mix to add to my shelf that hopefully I'll read at some point in the future. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm gonna start off with the thrillers and crime books and get those out of the way. The first one that I have is The Lost Man by Jane Harper. I already hauled a Jane Harper book earlier, and this one was actually recommended to me a long time ago, and I just haven't read it yet, and we were getting rid of it, and so I was like, why not? So hopefully I'll read both of those at some point and enjoy them. I know that Jane Harper is like a pretty popular author, so hopefully her stuff is actually good. We'll see, but I think like it must be if she's so popular. The next one I have is by an author who wrote a book that I adore. It was actually my favorite book of 2021, and that was The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. Kate Quinn has a few other books, and so one that was on my radar is The Huntress. And actually, I think a friend of mine read this and really enjoyed it, or maybe she's planning to read it, but somebody recommended it. I don't know. But apparently this is one of her best. And I was actually really disappointed by the second book that I read by her, which was The Alice Network. That one just did not do it for me. But hopefully love it, because yeah, I've heard that this is like, if you liked The Rose Code, you're probably gonna like this one. The next one I have is one that's been on my TBR for ages. I heard about this a long time ago. I don't know who from. I feel like maybe it was like Reagan from Peru's Project, but I heard about this book. I added it to my Goodreads TBR, and I haven't done anything about actually reading it. And again, we were getting rid of it, so I thought, why not just take it? So that is Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. This is a historical crime book set in London in 1863, and the little tagline at the bottom says, Things in Jars is an enchanting Victorian detective novel that explores what it is to be human in inhumane times. I don't know what it's all about, but it sounds interesting, and I've been wanting to read it for a while, so hopefully I read it sometime soon now that I have it. The next one I have is by a pretty popular thriller author who I have not read anything by, but I actually put this on a TBR like years ago. I had the ebook from the library, and then I just didn't get around to it, and so we were getting rid of it, obviously, and I thought, you know, why not just take it, because I'm already interested in it. Anyway, that book is Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I have not read anything by Riley Sager. I know that he's pretty popular, although I think his books are pretty hit or miss. I feel like most people like this one when they read it, and it's not too gory and disgusting, hopefully. So yeah, again, do I know what it's about? Not particularly. It appears to be about a summer camp, and this girl makes some new friends, and then they go into the woods, and they never come back. And then many years later, the girl is asked to come back to the camp. Everything kicks off from there. And then the last crime book I have is another historical crime set in actually London in the 1800s. Anyway, but that is The Graves of Whitechapel by Claire Evans. The cover is so gorgeous that I literally couldn't pass this up, so I took it. I think historical crime is probably like a nice subgenre for me, because I really like historical fiction, and part of the reason I like it is like the atmosphere of like a different time period. So maybe historical crime is something that I'm gonna enjoy more than like normal crime books, but we'll see. I barely ever read it. So anyway, so those are all the crime books that I've got. And then I also have, like I said, a few historical fiction books. We were getting rid of A Long Petal of the Sea by Isabel Allende. I studied some of her stories in university, and then my friend Evie read some of her novels and really enjoyed them. I haven't read anything else by her apart from like in my first year of university, like first semester. We're going back quite a ways, but I've been meaning to pick up more by her for the longest time. I really liked her writing. It was very beautiful. So yeah, I've been meaning to read her books for a long time, and now that I actually have this, hopefully I'll read it at some point. Again, do I know what it's about? No. Do I ever? No. It's historical fiction. I like her writing style, so we're gonna see how it goes. The next one that I have is actually the second book in a series, but I think it doesn't actually matter that much if you read the whole series. I think you can read it as a standalone because it's just like a retelling of a Greek myth. But that is For the Winner by Emily Hauser. I don't know how you say it. This is, as I just said, a Greek retelling about Atalanta, something to do with the Golden Fleece. I really don't know that much about ancient Greece and all of the myths and legends and all that. So I really like reading historical fiction about that, because then, you know, I feel like I learned something as well, and it's just like an interesting time period to read about. I really like the cover of this one. The next one I have is actually another Greek historical fiction book, and that is Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. I had actually never heard of this book until very recently when Meg from Meg with Books did a video where she read this book. I think she gave it like 4 stars, so she enjoyed it quite a bit, and it just sounds really good, and it's about Helen of Troy, and I recently read Daughters of Sparta, which follows Clytemnestra and Helen, as in Helen of Troy. I feel like I am more familiar with that story, so it'll be interesting to read this one as well and kind of see how she's portrayed and everything. And I know that this is also the first book in a series. I think it's a trilogy, and the different books follow like different characters in that time period, and like I've heard really good things. And then I've got 2 classics. So we were getting rid of this little copy of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which I thought was a very cute little copy. I like the spine a lot, and I read this book a few years ago and I absolutely loved it. So this is good because this doesn't actually add anything to my TBR because I've already read it, but I just own the physical copy, which is nice because I listened to the audiobook. I couldn't say no, you know? And then the other classic that I got was one which I really never thought I was ever gonna read, but now I'm like, maybe I should read this. And you know, I've heard good things. I think I watched the movie. I did watch the movie and I was really frustrated by it, but that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Again, we were getting rid of it and it's a classic. And I feel like, you know, I do read classics eventually, so I might as well collect them now while I can and read them at some point in the future. And then finally, I have one nonfiction book that we were getting rid of, and it just sounded very interesting. And this book is called When the Dogs Don't Bark, A Forensic Scientist's Search for the Truth by Professor Angela Gallup. This is basically her memoir talking about some of her different cases that she's worked on as a forensic scientist. And it just sounds pretty interesting, to be honest. It's probably going to scare me a little bit because, you know, it's talking about people who got murdered, which is, you know, not something I like to read about that much. But I don't know, this is so weird. When I was younger, I used to watch like CSI, as in crime scene investigation, all the time. And then as I've got older, I've just become such like a weakling about watching those sorts of shows. Like I just can't do it. Anyway, but nowadays I just really don't have a stomach for it. I think I like to just, you know, read nice things. Although that being said, I read a lot of fantasy where people get killed and stuff like that. I don't often read things like just about people getting murdered. This book sounded interesting and we were getting rid of it, so I took it. And that is everything. We're gonna go back to previous Samantha to wrap up the rest of this video, but yes, I did it again. Oops. I almost quoted Britney Spears there, but not quite, so anyway. Back to Samantha. Those are all of the 34 books that I have acquired in the last 3 years. I have actually bought other books as well and like received other books as well during this time, but the books that I didn't mention are books that I got, read, and then unhauled because I didn't like them, basically. There are more than that I've bought. I haven't really bought that many books in the last 3 years, but I have received a lot or got them for free for whatever reason. A lot of books. A lot of talking. So this video is gonna be really long, I already know, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what books you've hauled recently. Let me know if you buy a lot of books or if you prefer to borrow like me. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and I will hopefully have another video up soon. So I'll see you whenever that is. Bye. Never say never. No. Anyway, there are some things that you can say never to. What? It is. Look at it. It's pretty. In the backyard of your old farm in the summer. Stayed there for 3 weeks where we learned to love each other. Wrote you letters, sent a message to the that day. Skip to the present.